Hello VC, I'm Mike, and this is episode number 2 of Mike Digs Vinyl. In my first video I talked about my history collecting vinyl and how the collection has grown and changed through the years, but I didn't show any vinyl. So this time I want to jump right into it and show some examples from my collection. And I'll start off with the only record I have from when I started collecting as a teen, and it survived all the subsequent purges, and that is Bruford One of a Kind on EG. Of course, it's Bill Bruford with guitarist Alan Holdsworth, keyboardist Dave Stewart, and bass player Jeff Berlin. And it's still in pretty good shape for something I've had for about 30 years now. Alright, and of course one of my favorite bands starting off was Yes, and I collected all the solo works by the Yes members, but my favorite by far, and I don't think this is an original copy, actually I know it's not, I bought this a few years ago. My favorite is Chris Squire, Fish Out of Water. Incredible album, featuring Bill Bruford on drums, Patrick Moraz is on here as well. Mel Collins from King Crimson on sax. Incredible album. Definitely worth picking up if you're into progressive rock or Yes. It's not in the best shape, but I'm glad to have it in my collection. I love this album. I also mentioned that early on, as well as like Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, the early, your basic progressive rock stuff, I was into sort of the hard rock, not really heavy metal I'd say, but hard rock, European guitar-based hard rock, and one of my favorite guys is Gary Moore. Now, I used to have pretty much everything by Gary Moore in my collection back when I was in the teens. There was a flea market in Tampa, and Oldsmar Flea Market, actually it's in Oldsmar, but they had a store called Aces Records, and Aces carried all kinds of European imports, Japanese imports, all kinds of neat picture discs, 12-inch singles, magazines like Kerrang, the British heavy metal magazine. And so I collected everything by Gary Moore. I picked this up a few years ago. Yeah, good stuff. Alcatraz, this is probably their first or second, I can't remember, with Yngwie Malmsteen. Great guitar player. Graham Bonnet from Rainbow on vocals. On Rockshire Records. You should look up Rockshire Records sometime on Google and read the weird, sordid history of that label. Kind of weird. And Pelletary, after Graham Bonnet got booted out of Alcatraz, I guess Alcatraz is done, he started a new band with another hotshot guitarist, Chris and Pelletary. Kind of along the same lines, I like this record a lot. Apparently the guitarist didn't care too much for it in hindsight, or for Graham Bonnet especially. But I like Graham Bonnet's vocal style, and I love this record. So getting more into the prog thing, as I expanded my collection, I got beyond just the basic Yes and ELP, King Crimson, things like this. This is David Torn, Cloud About Mercury, with the rhythm section from King Crimson in the 80s, Tony Levin and Bill Bruford, and Mark Isham on trumpet. This one's on ECM. I think I picked this up a few years ago, but great record. Of course, Robert Fripp, guitarist from King Crimson. This is Under Heavy Manners, God Save the Queen on EG. I love Robert Fripp. I love his solo guitar stuff, but I also love King Crimson. There's my red. This is an Editions EG pressing. But I mentioned that a very important album to me I picked up from a little record store in Clearwater, Florida. A lady named Irene. I picked this up just because it looked interesting. I think at the time I was really wanting to get into world music, African music, Asian music, and I saw, it says in the corner here, New Africa, but as I listened to it more, this is Trilogy on celluloid. As I listened to it more, I got more into the other two records in the 3LP set, Hard Sell and Beat Freaks. These are early to mid 80s productions by Bill Laswell and Material out of New York City. You've got things like let's see, Time Zone with Africa Bambaataa and John Lydon, Johnny Rotten. Golden Palominos with let's see, you got some Anton Fear, Arto Lindsay, Fred Frith, Jamaluddin Takuma, David Moss, John Zorn. Interesting stuff. Last Poets, Grand Mixer DST, B-Side, Change the Beat. Some really good early hip-hop and stuff. And interesting productions. It really got me into Bill Laswell. And from there I took off and I collected pretty much everything by Bill Laswell. And for the most part, it's interesting stuff. It's not always great, but it's always interesting. This is one of my favorite records by him. It's a solo record he put out for Electro Musician called Basslines, very early on. Great record. It's got Ronald Shannon Jackson from Decoding Society on here, George Lewis on trombone, Fred Frith, Daniel Ponce, Martin BC, who's also a producer, David Moss on percussion, Philip Wilson on drums, and there's Laswell there. Great album. Kind of along the lines, he worked a little bit with Brian Eno in New York City, pestered him to get on some recording stuff. Ended up on My Life in the Bush of Ghosts and on Land. I think on Lizard Point is the track he's on. But if you like My Life in the Bush of Ghosts, you might like this one as well. It's got kind of that experimental, funky Fourth World vibe. Here's another early one on celluloid, a Bill Laswell production. You can't really see anything from the cover except a nice painting there. This is Ginger Baker, Horses and Trees. Great record. Early Laswell production. It's got Ginger Baker, Shankar, the Indian violinist, Bernie Worrell, P-Funk, Daniel Ponce on percussion, Ayub Dayang, African percussionist, Grand Mixer DST. A lot of really interesting drum, rhythmic type, almost hip-hoppy at times. And along the same lines is another celluloid release. This is Deadline, Down by Law. This is actually kind of Philip Wilson, if you know his work, percussionist, drummer. I'm not that familiar with him, but it was really his record that Laswell produced. It's got Jonas Hellborg, I'm not really sure how you pronounce that. Ayub Dayang on percussion. Jaco Pastorius even plays on one track, although Laswell said he was kind of in rough shape when he played on it, but he still sounds great. I love this record, Deadline, Down by Law. Speaking of Jonas Hellborg, this is The Word on Laswell's later label, an Island imprint. This is on Axiom. Chris Blackwell from Island apparently made a deal with Laswell where he kind of gave him total creative freedom on this label Axiom, and he created some really interesting stuff on here. So kind of along the same lines from the New York downtown scene, John Zorn. This is The Big Gun Down. This is on Elektra Nonesuch. I just bought this recently. Kind of an expensive collectible piece. I paid good money for it, but it's in really good shape. I'm glad to have it in my collection. I've got a lot of John Zorn, mostly on CD. Very interesting fellow. And I can't remember exactly how I got an On You Sound. It's a British label. Kind of Bill Laswell had his own thing going in the US. Adrian Sherwood with the On You Sound label had his thing going in England. This is Gary Clayle and the On You Sound system. Was it Party at the End of the Century? End of the Century Party. Great record. One of the first ones I bought on the On You Sound label. Good place to start. He's got Gary Clayle, Bim Sherman, the reggae dub singer, Style Scott from Dub Syndicate, and Roots Radix on drums. The rhythm section from the early Sugar Hill Records label, Doug Wimbish, Keith LeBlanc, and oh God, I'm drawing a blank here, not a guitar player, Skip McDonald. They hooked up with Adrian Sherwood, did a couple of productions after they left Sugar Hill Records for Tommy Boy, but then went over to England and became part of the On You Sound stable. Did a few records with Mark Stewart of Pop Group, and kind of did their own thing under the name Tackhead. Great stuff though. The On You Sound label is a label I love. I collect anything I can find on it. It's still in existence. Adrian Sherwood's still going strong. Here's Mark Stewart. This one is actually on Upside Records, but it's got the Sugar Hill Gang, Rhythm Section, Tackhead, Fats Comet, whatever else you want to call them, Keith LeBlanc, Skip McDonald, Doug Wimbish. Great musicians. Along the same lines, the original bass player for Public Image Limited, Jaw Wobble, real name John Wardle, did some really interesting stuff in the 80s, and then after dealing with some issues, came back in the 90s and still going. But this is one from, I believe, the late 80s. This is his band, The Invaders of the Heart, Without Judgment, and this is a Dutch pressing on, I think, KK Records, yeah. Justin Adams on guitar, David Harrow on keyboards and percussion, and Michael Schutz, or Michel Schutz, you might recognize that name if you're into early hip-hop. He was the drummer for Urban Dance Squad, Dutch hip-hop kind of rocky band or something. I love this record. I got this without knowing a whole lot about it, but I really, really like it. A lot of kind of improv. I think it was all recorded live and then edited down. Jaw Wobble did some work with the guys from Can, or specifically Holger Schuke, probably butchering that name, and the drummer, was it Jackie or Yaki Lebetzeit? But this is Snake Charmer. This is a little EP. Also includes The Edge from U2. Kind of a interesting, funky, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it's a lot of fun. And it's mixed by Francois Kevorkian. Did a lot of 80s hip-hop stuff in New York. Production, mixing. There's a lot of remixes. You find a lot of his remixes on old 12 inches. And kind of staying on the 80s tip, one artist I really like, he actually dates back earlier in the 80s. I'm not real familiar with his early work with Bebop Deluxe, although I do collect it, but I really like his stuff from the 80s, kind of experimental, kind of rough, bedroom keyboard, synthesizer, tape machine type stuff. This is Bill Nelson. The Love That Whirls, Diary of a Thinking Heart. Did some very interesting stuff, kind of I guess an introvert, but a lot of like spontaneous composition type things. Excellent guitar player too. I really like his stuff, and he did a lot of work with David Sylvian, the guys from Japan, the guys from Yellow Magic Orchestra. And speaking of Sylvian, here's Gone to Earth on Virgin Records, his second solo album, I think. Featuring Bill Nelson, Robert Fripp on guitar. Another 80s group I really like, XTC. This is The Big Express. I think there's a UK press in here. Just gotten into their stuff kind of casually lately, but I really like it. Also on the 80s tip, a producer that I really enjoy. He does a lot of like remixing work and production for big name artists like Madonna and stuff, but his name is William Orbit. He had a band early on called Torch Song, or not really a band, but kind of a label he recorded under. This is with Lori Mayer, I think. Yeah. This is what, Wish Thing? No, Exhibit A on IRS. But just incredible use of electronics and stuff, and kind of pop production with brains. I really like it. But getting into the 90s, I collected a lot of stuff mostly on CD, but I did pick up a few things on vinyl because it's sort of a vinyl medium. These the turntablist movement that came out in probably the mid to late 90s, Invisibl, Skratch, Piklz, Executioners, X-Men out of New York, Skratch, Piklz out of San Francisco Bay Area. And this is Invisibl, Skratch, Piklz versus the Clams of Death on Asphodel, DJ Qbert, Shortcut. I'm not really, can't read without my glasses. Who else on there? It's a compilation on Ulmer Records. I don't know if they're even around anymore, but I absolutely love this cover art. Doze Green, that's the name of the artist. Graffiti style artwork, but you can see in the artwork some elements like a turntable cartridge kind of record, just little interesting bits and pieces incorporated in his artwork. But there's a series of these: Deep Concentration, Deeper Concentration, I think Deep Concentration 3. Let's see, there's Apollo from the Skratch, Piklz, and Fluid Motion, Beat Junkies, J Boogie's Dubtronic Science, DJ Spooky, Mixmaster Mike, DJ Eddie Def, Fifth Platoon. A lot of good stuff on here. Beautiful, beautiful cover. Back in the 80s thing, I like to collect 80s hip-hop, especially for the instrumentals. One of the producers I like from the 80s, really love, Arthur Baker. You're probably familiar with him if you're in 80s hip-hop stuff. His label Streetwise. This is, of course, the New Order Confusion 12-inch. But I love the way he used drum machines, heavy on the beat. Really neat stuff. Here's another one, kind of an odd one on Streetwise. This is Air Force One. See the light, feel the heat. This is obviously Oliver Ross's copy here that I picked up. One of Arthur Baker's probably better well-known productions is Criminal Element Orchestra. Put the Needle on the Record. I looked for this one for a while. It's not really that hard to find probably, but really, really cool track. Very percussive. So getting back into sort of the avant-garde stuff, but now more into the jazz vein, going along from Bill Laswell and John Zorn. This is an artist I really love. His name is James Blood Ulmer, guitar player and sort of the harmonic style of Ornette Coleman. Yeah, let's see who's on here. Ronald Shannon Jackson on drums, David Murray on tenor sax, Oliver Lake on alto, Oludara on trumpet, Amin Ali on electric bass. Fantastic record. This is on Rough Trade. It must be UK pressing. I think I have the US pressing of this as well. Absolutely love James Blood Ulmer. His kind of weird, jazzy style of the blues. Not really jazzy, but just funky harmonic. Speaking of harmonics, here's another guy carrying on the harmonic tradition, played with Ornette Coleman. Had his own band, the Decoding Society. This is Ronald Shannon Jackson, Pulse, on celluloid. Kind of a solo drum album, but not just drums. Does some really neat stuff on here. Some spoken word type stuff. I think there's a piece from The Raven. I don't know. If you see it, grab it. It's a great record. Pulse. I think it was released by Knitting Factory Records under a different name on CD. Can't remember what that was. Ornette. the originator of harmonics. This is the quartet in prime time. An interesting record because his old quartet with Don Cherry, Charlie Hayden, and Billy Higgins on drums plays material, and prime time, kind of his harmonic band from later on with Ornette, with DiNardo, his son, on drums, Calvin Weston on drums, Jamaluddin Takuma on bass, Al McDowell on bass, and Charlie Ellerby and Bern Nix on guitar. So 2 guitars, 2 basses, 2 drums, but playing the same material as the quartet on this one, so very interesting. I actually like Ornette's kind of 70s and early 80s stuff, I think more than his 60s. Not there's anything wrong with it, but just funky stuff. This is, I picked this up in a thrift store a long time ago when I was in college for probably $1 or $2, and I didn't really know what it was, but I recognized the label. This is Carl Berger on ESP disc. I can't remember the name of the record. I'm not going to open it up right now. But I believe it's got Ed Blackwell on drums and maybe Carlos Ward on sax. I can't remember. It goes for pretty good money because it's on ESP disc and early pressing. This is an original pressing. But I don't think it's been repressed, and the reason I believe for that is the recording of his work on Vibes. It just sounds real tinny. Not a very good recording. A rare record, but not something I listen to often because the sound quality on his Vibes is just kind of jarring. So this is kind of brings me up to what I'm collecting now. There's a record store in town that, it's not really a record store, it's a book and record, movies, everything all in one store. But they have a lot of old records, and I think what they've done at one point is bought out a used record store that had probably gone out of business, and everything had gone in storage. So there's a lot of records from like the mid to late 50s, a lot of jazz records, very interesting, and it's all kind of stuffed in the bargain bin at the bottom, and it's all priced cheap, like $2 to $5, and they have a deal. 4 records for $5 and under for $10. So if you get 4 $5 records, which some of them may be vastly underpriced because they just kind of sloppily did this, you get 4 records for $10. So I pick up stuff like this. This is Dave Pell's Jazz Octet on RCA Victor. But you know, I kind of look at the records, I make a note of them, I look them up on Discogs, see who was in the band, listen to some samples. So I've really expanded my 50s jazz collection that way. But I want to go into a few more things while I'm at it. Like I said, in the 90s, early 2000s when I was in college, I picked up mostly stuff on CD. There was a store in town that had just bins and bins and bins of used CDs. So I picked up a ton of stuff on CD, you know, blew through a lot of student loan money. But better than spending on burgers and beer. This is Asian Games. This is Ryuichi Sakamoto, Bill Laswell on bass, Yosuke Yamashita on keys too, I believe. This is on Verve. Interesting stuff, not my favorite album, but kind of obscure. Here's a comp on Manifold label. I don't know if you can see that too well. Endless 2, but some very interesting musicians. Thomas Kohner, Voice of I, Steve Roach, you probably know him. Final, can't remember who that was, maybe Justin Broderick. Null, Nikki Skopolidis and Bill Laswell. Morphia is the name of the track. Controlled Bleeding, Mandible Chatter, I don't know anything about them. Robert Rich, you've probably heard of. Interesting comp, good stuff. From the turntablist stuff, the hip hop, I collected the whole series of this when it came out. I love these. A lot of fun. Kind of silly and stupid, but a lot of fun. I mean, and the best guys doing the turntablist work, really, in my book. This is Invisibl, Skratch, Piklz. This is the Sugar Fragger show. I think there were 5 of these, and then another one later on that wasn't kind of in the number series. It's like Sugar Fragger 2000. But really fun stuff. Kind of a revolving lineup. It always had Qbert and probably Shortcut on them, but sometimes I think Paulo or DJ Disc came in. I'm not sure exactly who was the Sugar Fragger. I suspect it was DJ Disc, but I could be wrong. The guy under the grocery bag mask there with the horns. He always introduces the CDs. They're live sessions is what they are. Live turntable sessions, probably recorded at like Hubert's bedroom or something, I don't know. But they actually have videos too. I have the videos. Great stuff. The stores, I always collect these when I see them and they're cheap enough. The little mini LPs, CDs, Japanese presses. You know, the sound quality is not always the best. I think a lot of people think they are, but they're not necessarily. But they're fun to have. This is XTC, I think English Settlement. I'm sure I didn't pay what the original price was on there. Grant Green. What is this? Grant's First Stand. This is the 24-bit RVG remastering. Before he started doing all the remasterings for Blue Note here in the US, he was invited to do a special series for I think Toshiba in Japan. And so these early remasterings that say 24-bit by RVG, these are really good. A lot of people don't like his RVG remasterings done in the US. The later ones, what he tried to do is take the early stereo mixes on Blue Note, where a lot of times you have drums on one side and like say sax on the other, and kind of blend them together a little so you don't have that what seems almost today like a bizarre separation, like drums way to the left and sax way to the right. Tried to blend them, but a lot of people just really didn't like that. But these early 24-bit by RVG remasterings are really good. Well worth picking up. It's the Latin bit on Blue Note. These I picked up quite a while ago. This is Don Cherry. I think they call this Orient. I think this is like a Get Back Italian mini LP reissue. Really cool. I like these things a lot. Don Cherry Moo, first part. This is Sunspots. Probably another Italian company put this out. This is some musicians I kind of discovered at my music store. They had these on the shelf. I'd never heard of these guys. I probably should have, at least one of these guys. But just, I like the format, the little kind of, it's almost like a little slip thing, like homemade almost. You know, you got a disc kind of in a paper sleeve here. But this is Brotzman, Peter Brotzman, Hamid Drake, the drummer. He's been around the US for a long time, and I think Kent Kessler, yeah, on bass. Good stuff. Live at the Empty Bottle. I think it's a Chicago jazz club. It's a limited press here. It looks like 746 of 800. I don't know if you can see that. But I really like this stuff. The stuff on Okadisc, whatever you pronounce it. Atavistic, Unheard Music Series, all that. Anything by Ken Vandermark, Peter Brotzman, I can find cheap, I buy. I really like that stuff. Here's another mini LP. I think I picked this up in New York at the Downtown Music Gallery. I used to go up to New York on a fairly regular basis to visit some friends up there and just sightsee. But there's a store called Downtown Music Gallery that's always worth visiting. I always spend too much money there. But this is Music Improvisation Company. I think this may be the first one by Derek Bailey and the Music Improv Company. I think, yeah, it originally came out on ECM. Let's see, we got Derek Bailey, Evan Parker, Hugh Davies, Jamie Muir. You probably know him from King Crimson briefly. Was their percussionist in the, let's see, the lineup with Bill Bruford and John Wetton. Good stuff, interesting stuff. I actually saw Derek Bailey once live in New York with the company, John Zorn, Zena Parkins on harp, Jim O'Rourke, bunch of great musicians. Kind of a weird experience. I'll talk about that at some later point. A couple 12 inches, or not 12 inches, 7 inches I collect. I don't really look for 7 inches, but when I see something interesting, I'll pick it up. Here's a James Blood Ulmer, 7 inch. Yeah, I'll pick this one up. Where Did All the Girls Come From? A Night Lover from Freelancing, a Columbia LP. He was briefly on Columbia. Doctor Who. Tom Baker, my favorite doctor. When I was a kid, probably in my early teens, I used to watch Doctor Who on PBS, and he was the Doctor. This is the theme song from when he was the Doctor, my favorite version of the Doctor Who theme song. And real briefly, before I finish, I just want to show some stuff from kind of my wife's collections, both of our collection really, but I started it off by buying her records. She was a big fan of Disney, collected like Disney figurines when I first met her, and I was in Canada at an antique store and I saw a Disney record and I thought she might like that. Didn't have a record player, but I just thought, you know, she might think it's cute. So we started collecting Disney records, and we've got a bunch. We've got several hundred. Here's a inner sleeve from the Disneyland label. What does it say? It's the world's greatest collection of children's records, but it's not all kids stuff. There's a division called Vista, or Buena Vista. They put out some classical music and like park related stuff. But just some interesting stuff from their collection. This is 78 Walt Disney's Treasure Island. Now the stock's getting kind of tall here. Let's see, this is Treasure Island on RCA Victor. I think the early 78s came out in RCA Victor, at least in the US. We've got about maybe 10 78s. This is, you know, typical soundtrack on Disneyland records, The Absent-Minded Professor. There's a little tie-in with Necco Wafers, the candy Bullwhip Griffin. I love these kind of weird product tie-in things. The Mickey Mouse Club here, it's Sing Along with Jimmy Dodd. But you can see the original Mickey Mouse Club there, and that's in there somewhere. Yeah, pretty much anything on the Disneyland label we'll pick up. We've got multiples of several of them, the more common ones, but some of the more interesting ones are the rare ones that most people wouldn't pick up. This is the Disney World Adventureland Steel Band. We don't even listen to these much. I mean, we just buy them because they're neat. I know there's other Disney collectors out there, but you don't really see their stuff too much. Here's an old Fantasia. I think this is the 2 LP set. I think there's a 3 LP set as well. We have multiple versions of the Fantasia release with Stokowski conducting. The Philadelphia Orchestra here, but it's the original motion picture soundtrack. And you know, we collect other odd stuff. You know, we have a lot of picture discs, Disney picture discs. But here's one, the Virgin Megastore in Orlando, Florida. Downtown Disney, before they closed, they had a section that had Japanese imports upstairs by the books. Hard to find, but we found some of these. These are very interesting. These are shape cut CDs, Japanese imports. This is Sweetheart is the name of this one. Romantic songs, no doubt, but Japanese press. So one more thing. Along with Bill Laswell, a guitar player, used to play with him quite a bit at one time, but he's kind of doing his own thing now. Bizarre thing. This is Buckethead. But I bought one of the CDs once on the Cyber Octave label, and when you ordered it, you could get it with the comic book. This is the comic book. Dave McKean is the artist. But I had 3 of these at one time. I gave one to a friend of mine. He was in the comics. I don't know what happened to the second, but this is my 3rd and final copy. Kind of neat. So that's kind of a sampling of my collection and my wife's collection. And in future videos, I'm going to show more of my recent digs, alternating with kind of going through my collection, kind of chunks at a time. So I hope you enjoy, and I look forward to showing some more of my stuff. And yeah, I'll see you in the future. Thanks for watching, VC. Bye.